About China. In particular, hundreds of American companies have been subjected to cyber attacks from the Chinese military. Yet state-backed Chinese companies are growing their presence in the United States. Chinese investments in the US, which were nearly non-existent a few years ago, are now over $50 billion. And as my newspaper recently reported, Chinese companies are planning to bid for one of the largest hotel chains in the United States, what would be the largest ever Chinese takeover of a US company. Would you stop them?
Well, let me tell you this, Mr. Baker. In terms of the cyber attacks, we have the capability to not only have a defensive posture, but also to make it clear to people that if you attack us with cyber attacks, we will destroy the mechanisms that you're using to attack us. I want to give you a little trip around the world. I served on the Defense Committee for 18 years. In the Ukraine, arm the people there so they can fight for themselves. In the eastern part of Europe, make sure that Finland and the Baltics know that if the Russians move, we move. In Syria, yes, a no-fly zone in the north on the Turkish border, a no-fly zone on the south on the Jordanian border. Anybody flies in their first time, maybe they can fly out. They fly in there a second time, they will not fly out. And it also becomes a sanctuary for the people to be, and it also sends many messages in the Middle East that we're still involved. Saudi Arabia, cut off the funding for the radical clerics, the ones that preach against us, but they're fundamentally our friends. Jordan, we want the king to reign for 1,000 years. Egypt, they've been our ally and a moderating force in the Middle East throughout their history. In the countries of the Gulf states of Bahrain, the Cleveland Clinic is opening an operation. Clearly, we see the same with them. And in Israel, we have no better ally in the world, and no more criticizing them in public. We should support them. And finally, China. China doesn't own the South China Sea. And I give the President some credit for being able to move a naval force in there to let the Chinese know that we're not going to put up with it anymore. And in the trade agreement, the TPP, it's critical to us, not only for economic reasons and for jobs, because there's so many people who are connected to getting jobs because of trade, but it allows us to create not only economic alliances, but also potentially strategic alliances against the Chinese. They're not our enemy, but they're certainly not our friend. And finally, I will say to everybody in this room, we've been talking about taxes and economics. When the fall comes and we run against Hillary, which would be a disaster if she got elected. I have two 16-year-old girls, and I want this country to be strong. We make promises we can't keep under the bright light of the fall, we will have trouble. We must make sure that our economic programs and our military programs are solid. I served in Washington as the chairman of the Budget Committee, and we got the budget balanced, and in Ohio as the CEO, and guess what? We got to have a CEO mentality and a way to beat Hillary Clinton and the Democrats in the fall, and our ideas have to add up, they have to be solid, and people have to know we have the confidence to lead America. And as president, I will lead this country as I have before in Washington and in Ohio, and will return both on domestic and international affairs. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak this time, Jerry.
Thank you, Governor. Plenty of opportunity.